So, welcome, my name's Lance.
My name's Ladrhyn, and I think in this video we're just talking about our experiences over the number of years of ourselves and other people, of what people experience really. So
Ladrhyn over the years has done a number of group events which have been quite interesting, and both of us have done one-to-one sessions with people. And it's quite useful to know the sorts of things we've experienced, because you may either experience them yourself as a participant, or if you intend to do client sessions or group sessions, you might experience those things as well. So, of course, one of the most common things is people get to the end of the session and go, whoa!
Yeah, it happens a lot, especially first timers, because they don't know what to expect, do they?
Yeah, so, but there's probably the biggest thing that happens during these sessions is really deep, profound trance states. Because people just aren't used to the fact of their brain activity being changed, and they tend to go into very deep states. And in some cases, in fact, you can even get to the end of the session and be talking and asking people how they are, and people sort of moving and getting themselves ready to leave and go on with their day. And there's still one or two people lying there, just completely unresponsive. And of course, this is fine. They've just gone into a really deep trance.
Eventually they're responsive.
Eventually they're responsive. And occasionally their friends are kind of thinking, are they all right? You know, sort of giving them a nudge and stuff.
They've just gone very deep, basically.
Just very deep.
Which is good.
And the thing to be aware of in that sort of situation, if you know anything about hypnosis and trance, is that people are very suggestive in that state. So it's just that's something to bear in mind. If their friends start to get worried, say no, they're fine. They're just processing what they need to process. And you can just, if you feel like it, you can just lean down next to them and just say, you just take all the time you need. You're completely safe. Enjoy where you are, and come back as quickly or as slowly as you want. So yeah, just something to be aware of.
It's like when people get into, you've probably experienced this yourself, when you've come back from a very deep sleep and you woke up and someone's telling you to get up, and you just have to take your time with these things. So if you do have a light session and it just takes some time, just be gentle on yourself. It's given that enough. Always, for me, I don't know about you, but if there's like a half an hour session, I usually leave like 45 minutes. Just that extra time just to come back. What I specialise in is group events, really, which people love. It's very sacred, it can be very shamanic, but I do it in a way that's very unique to everybody, because everyone's experience is completely different under the lamp, isn't it? It's like what you see is completely different to what your neighbour next to you might see under the lamp. And for me personally, I love doing group size, big groups, because it feels like everyone's in the same experience but having their own unique experience in the same process, which I find really, really beautiful, and people love that too.
Yeah, and we've both seen some pretty unique things. I remember going to one event where there were 45 women in the room, and sometimes people have a let's just say a very pleasurable experience with physical manifestations. Let's just leave it at that. But one of the other things that I've noticed on a few occasions is people just bursting into spontaneous laughter.
And you think, where does that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Where does that come from? But again, it's a release.
Very good.
In fact, there was one group session, wasn't there, that we did where someone started laughing at the end of the session, and they just laughed continuously for, I think it was probably 15 or 20 minutes, just laughing and laughing and laughing. They were completely conscious and awake and alert. They were just, something had triggered their laughter, and they just laughed and laughed. And at the end of that, just said, I just feel so much better. I've just released all this. So yeah, pretty cool.
Well, I think what's going on there is that light produces light, but we need light in our daily lives, which produces serotonin, isn't it? It's that good feel hormone in our body. And when you have a long period of it, if you perhaps had depression or holding on to those emotions, and sometimes those emotions can be manifested a little bit in an opposite direction for you to release. I've seen people cry, very emotionally, happy tears, sad tears. It's reminded them of experiences that they've had in the past, which I feel like the light machine, for me, which I've been doing research, is that's why there's some similarities with plant medicines and light, which is beautiful. People get really big releases from the light, and it's safe as well. There's no purging, and it's you can turn it off and you feel fine. It's just how far do you want to go in that process?
There is a lot of research. One of the things I do is stay on top of all the scientific magazines online and things like that, and over the past few years there's a lot more and more research on using things like DMT, ayahuasca, ketamine, MDMA, all those sorts of things for very brief and quick therapies on people to release things like PTSD and depression and stuff like that. So, and people do have that experience even just with a psychedelic light-induced session, along with spontaneous relief from pain and things like that. That's another thing that actually happens quite commonly. The emotional release thing is an interesting thing. I mean, a lot of people do. I've had people come out of sessions say, I met my grandmother and she said, I love you and you're going to be okay. And that was all they needed to hear. And they just, they cry their eyes out, and it's just a huge emotional release. So, yeah.
Yeah, my experience of spirituality and mediumship over the many years is that, people have, this is what I guide people to do in my retreats and events, is that I get people to have their own experiences. And that's something that's very unique and personal. And it's almost like the light machine, the lamps have generate this bridge between consciousness and the physical and the non-physical. And yeah, people see visions of past loved ones, and it's breaking that barrier between the physical and non-physical, where you can have that contact and have a sense of, that loved one that's passed over close to you. You see through almost like the visions, the visuals that you get. It's coming through that like fabric of light almost.
Yeah. And
yeah, it's a very beautiful experience that people are able to let go once again and say goodbye to people that have probably passed over. I mean, it's not the purpose for all the light machines, but
sometimes it's the first time that people have actually let go, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
Under a session. It's the first time they've truly, fully released and let themselves just relax into the light. And as a facilitator, that's, obviously the first couple of minutes can be, a little bit daunting for people that got the flashing lights and not used to it. But once they really relax into it, the places that people go, and preferably come back from, can be quite profound. And I mean, you've learned some valuable lessons as well around sorts of things doing your group events. Even around simple things like we have a safety questionnaire that people fill out and things like that. And I think the first time you got everyone to fill out the safety questionnaire and collected them all and put them in a nice little pile, and then you thought afterwards, hang on a minute, what's if someone goes into a really deep trance state and no one actually talks to them? I have no idea who they are.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to call their name back and you don't know. So it's important, if you do group events, it's important to keep the consent form, the quick safety questionnaire at the bottom of the feet next to the person. You know who it is, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to learn in group events. I have a lot of people approaching me, and it's, I guess for me it's easy, it's come natural because I've been doing it for years. But for people who want to do this and guide sessions of light, there's a lot to know, really. It's holding the space, and what that is it's controlling the space, the environment that you're in, to give people a good experience. I've been to many venues over the years, many venues, and there's one venue that I did in a place which was very noisy and loud. Although you can get deep in trance, sometimes when you're in a very deep trance state, all the other senses around you are very heightened. So outside it was a busy street with lots of noise, and for me it wasn't great. Some people had experiences, but for me I like to give my best, and that's what I love doing, is giving people a really good experience to go within themselves. And it's not all just about light. I mean, what we specialize in is with the gongs, and with Roxy with the RX1 is an audio-visual brainwave entrainment light machine, which sound with the light has a huge role, doesn't it?
Yeah, massive role. Yeah, both together just create a fully, completely immersive experience. And I mean, like you say, with the gongs, you've had some amazing experiences where people come out and they say that the vibrations from the gongs affected the light experience.
And totally.
Took them to different places. And I know you were mentioning something earlier before we came on camera about you sort of have, you learned about what you're comfortable with group size and things like that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done big groups, and I think some of them have been with you.
Yeah.
We've been at 40, 50 people, and it can be a lot to manage, especially if you're a facilitator, a solo facilitator that's dealing with all that stuff, and if someone gets very emotional, what do you do? So a comfortable group size for me can be about 15, 20 people, I'm comfortable with, and that's a good size. I can do personal events. Sometimes I do small events for small groups. Sometimes it's groups of women, just men's circles or mix. Can be 6 or 7 people or 8 people. Sometimes 4 under a lamp or 3. It depends how people feel comfortable as well.
Yeah.
But doing the group events is something very immersive. You're experiencing this experience together, but as I said earlier, it's your own unique experience. And then the sharing after, which is very beautiful, because the way I do my events is I do a bit of a guided meditation, play the light, get people comfortable. It starts off quite slow. So at the moment they're behind us. They're on like a standby, like a consistent light. It's a lamp, it's not flickering. So this is the demo where the LEDs are. But when it's on, it's flashing, strobing. It can be quite disturbing sometimes for people at the beginning, because it's unnatural to have your eyes closed and relax with someone shining a torch and flickering. But after a while you get used to it, you see the visuals, you relax, and then the brainwave entrainment side, which is quite powerful. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, well, and just before that, you made an interesting point that I'll expand on. That is about preframing the session for the group of people.
Yeah.
So obviously they've filled out the safety questionnaire, so they know if there's any contraindications that why they shouldn't be there, then that's fine. And there's no reason why they can't still be there, by the way. They just pull themselves a little bit away from the light and still enjoy the energy of the group. As a group changes, they can still obviously enjoy the sound of the gongs and things like that. So there's no need for someone not to attend. You just obviously need to be wary that if they're sensitive to light in any particular way, you have them not directly under the lamp. But the other thing, of course, about that sort of thing is the area of expectation. Now, sometimes you'll go to a personal session and your whole reason for being there is because you want to improve your creativity or flow states or things like that. So that's very specific. So you're going to have some sort of expectation, and there are sessions designed specifically for that, for creativity or peak performance and things like that.